All right, in this example, you've got codominance. So what would happen if you took this brown cow and you made it with a white bull? In this case, we're going to have an expression pattern where both are expressed at the same time. So we've got the offspring expressing white and brown equally, and it's just varying between the offspring's coat. And both of them be going at the same time. Another example, if we had cats, we have a white cat and a black cat. In a codominant situation, both white and black would be coming out at the same time. So instead of blending together and producing an intermediate, something in between the two, both are expressing and they're showing white phenotype and showing the brown phenotype in our cows here. Okay, so now you're probably like, huh? That doesn't make very much sense. Codominant seems very similar to incomplete dominant. Just reading the definitions, it does seem very similar. One way to set the two apart, incomplete dominant and codominant are both types of inheritance where both alleles are neither dominant nor recessive. In incomplete dominance, the resulting trait is a blend of the traits of parents, whereas codominance, the traits, both traits show up in the offspring. You can read more about it at that web link if you want to. If you're ready to move on, we're going to talk about what happens when you have multiple alleles. So this is the case in the classic example, same one that I did when I was in school, is looking at blood typing. So this means that multiple alleles, just like the name says, you have more, you have multiple alleles. So more than two types of alleles for the trait. One way that this could happen would be coat color in rabbits. Another example would be blood typing, where you've got kind of a mixture actually. In blood typing, you've got codominance and multiple alleles. So A and B are codominant, and O is another allele that's recessive. So you could have type A blood by being this genotype, having two A alleles, so two dominant alleles that are A, or you could have the genotype that's AO. So A is dominant and O is recessive. This is another case where we use just another letter. We just use an I with the A above it. I, in this case, can also represent O blood. So instead of writing A, O, and B, we're writing I. So basically we use three letters for this cross. The I, the A, the B, and the O. Or the I, the A, and the B. So again, blood type, the phenotype is type A blood. The genotype is AO or AA. Phenotype is B with BO or BB. Type O blood, this is like your homozygous recessive case. You can only be type O if you carry two O alleles, what we were writing with the letter I in this case. And you could also be the codominant case. You could have AB blood. Here's an example of a cross. We've used the letter I here to represent O. So this is type B blood with, so this is BO crossed with AB blood. The type of offspring would be AB, AO, type B blood, or BO. In this case, if you really quick try to think about it, how many different genotypes you have? Well, this is one distinct genotype, two distinct genotypes, 3, 4. So you have 4 different genotypes resulting, and you'd have 4 separate phenotypes. In this case, none of those phenotypes overlap. On this slide here, I used this image not because you're going to have to do a cross with polygenic traits, but I wanted you to get an idea of what it means, a picture of that goes along with the definition. Polygenic traits is the only one where you're not going to actually have to be able to do a Punnett square cross with them, but blood typing, incomplete dominance, and codominance you would have to do, you'll have to do a Punnett square cross with it. So polygenic traits are going to happen when several genes are interacting to produce a certain trait, and it's responsible for a lot of important traits. So many of the larger traits in humans are polygenic. Example would be skin pigmentation controlled by at least 3 genes in humans. Here in our example, we've got 2 mice, and we've got B. These two, you can see, and normally if we would have written it, we would have just written big B, little b. But in this case, the reason it's polygenic, we have big B, little b, and then big C, little c. We see more than one gene here. And then we've got a big B, little b, big C, little c for the other parent. And then you're looking here, you're seeing what's going to happen when those genes are interacting. They could either be resulting in gray offspring, a small percentage of them are going to be brown. And if you look, why are they brown? Well, they're homozygous recessive for that first gene. And last but not least, I went too far. Last but not least was the white color. If you want to flip back to it, you can, but that one's the last type of trait that could occur because of that polygenic trait. This next slide that I have, if I wouldn't have clicked, it was going to be for afterwards, but to break that word down, just like many of the science words we have, it can be a long word, but if you break it into pieces, it'll make more sense. So poly means many. In math class, you might have heard of a polyhedron. You might have heard of poly in English class. It means many. And then you've got gene. That's a sequence of DNA that codes for a protein. And you've got trait. It's a specific characteristic that varies from one individual for another. Poly, gene, and trait. And basically that word just means that. You have many genes that are interacting to form one trait. All right, another type of cross. This is another example of a Punnett square that I want you to be able to do by the end of this unit. It's with crossing sex-linked traits. So what that means is that for females, when we talked before, you're going to have an X and an X chromosome. Males are going to have an X and a Y chromosome. So there's certain traits, such as colorblindness, that are carried on the X and Y chromosome. So if in a case you have, if you're a male and your X chromosome, you inherit the trait for colorblindness, you don't have another X chromosome like the female that can help give you the, that's what I'm looking for, that can help give you the trait for normal vision. So if you, on your X chromosome, you inherit colorblindness, then you don't have another X chromosome that could also carry that allele for normal vision. And so that's why males have a higher percentage of colorblindness. So for sex-linked traits, we're looking at genes found on a sex chromosome. Example was colorblindness. And we'll be looking at human DNA. If you looked at human DNA, boys, 44 chromosomes, and then an X and a Y chromosome. So that would hit our 46. So if you looked way back at the very first page of the packet, I believe that's where we talked about having 46 chromosomes in human cells. Females, you have 44 chromosomes and then 2 X chromosomes. X chromosome is actually bigger than the Y chromosome. Y chromosome is a little tiny thing that does not have very much information at all. So girls, you have more genetic information. You're more complex creatures than the boys are. If we looked at our cross, so this is a cross showing colorblindness. The Y can't carry anything for colorblindness. And so we've crossed the male with a female. And the female is heterozygous for colorblindness. So if we looked at the resulting offspring, there's a 50% chance that they're female. Look here, 2 X's, 2 X's. Both of these possible offspring are female. If we look over at this side, we have an X and a Y. So both of these possible crosses are going to be male. And then the next thing you could look at is what alleles were passed on to them. So it got normal vision, and it got normal vision, from the mom, from the dad. Here, there's normal vision and color blindness, but because the female's picked up, it has two X chromosomes, that color blindness right here, that allele is not going to be expressed. The normal vision is going to dominate. So if we look down, if we jump down to the bottom, that's why we see 100% of the females have normal vision. And that's because both female possibilities contain the allele for normal vision. Now let's look over at the males. What happens here? So here we have our X chromosome with normal vision from mom, passed on to the offspring. He gets his X chromosome from mom. He's got normal vision. He inherits his Y chromosome from dad. Y doesn't have any, Y can't carry anything for normal vision or color blindness. So he only receives one allele for this trait. So for this offspring, he receives normal vision. If we go down, this offspring has received the color blindness allele. Got passed over here. So we have color blindness, and then we have, again, the Y chromosome that is not a carrier for normal vision or color blindness. And this offspring is going to end up being colorblind. You can look here, it's got the lowercase c. If you look at the writing up here, they could have done a better job putting a lowercase c. But when we go back to our cross and our offspring, we've got half the males having normal vision, half having color blindness. And that's the end of the presentation.